the message that shattered everything. Welcome to Rose and Retribution. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Isla Monroe's hands trembled as she stared at the glowing screen of her phone. The champagne flute in her other hand slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the bridal suite. She didn't hear it break. She didn't hear the concerned voices remind that the story should consist of 55,000 to 60,000 characters ver less than that 03:26 Part 1. The shocking betrayal. The message that shattered everything. Welcome to Rose and Retribution. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Isla Monroe's hands trembled as she stared at the glowing screen of her phone. The champagne flute in her other hand slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the bridal suite. She didn't hear it break. She didn't hear the concerned voices of her bridesmaids rushing toward her. All she could see were the words burning into her retinas like acid. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Your fiancé has been sleeping with your sister for the past year. Check the cloud folder I sent you. The photos don't lie. A friend." The world tilted on its axis. Isla's vision blurred as her heart hammered against her ribcage like a caged animal desperate to escape. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. In exactly 2 hours, she was supposed to walk down the aisle of the Grand Cathedral of St. Mary, wearing a custom Vera Wang gown that cost more than most people's cars, to marry Damien Cross, the man she had loved since college, the man who had promised her forever. Her fingers moved on autopilot, clicking the link in the message. A private cloud folder opened, and what she saw made bile rise in her throat. Photo after photo, video after video. Damien and her younger sister, Violet, tangled together in positions that left no room for innocent interpretation. The timestamps made it worse. Last month, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, the hotel room from their family vacation in the Hamptons, the back seat of Damien's Mercedes. Even worse, their childhood home, in Isla's own bedroom, on the bed where she had cried on Violet's shoulder about wedding stress just weeks ago. The perfect life built on lies. "Isla? Honey, what's wrong?" Her best friend and maid of honor, Carmen, grabbed her shoulders, trying to look at the phone. Isla jerked away, her body moving on pure instinct. She couldn't let anyone see. Not yet. Not when her entire reality was crumbling like ash in her hands. "I need a minute," Isla whispered, her voice hollow. She stumbled toward the bathroom, locking the door behind her. The face staring back at her in the mirror was a stranger. Perfectly applied makeup. Hair swept into an elegant updo with tiny crystals woven through the curls. She looked like a princess about to claim her fairy tale. But fairy tales were lies. Pretty, poisonous lies that women like her consumed until they choked. Isla Monroe had always been the golden daughter. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to Yale. By 28, she was a rising star architect at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. She had done everything right. She had been patient with Damien during his struggling years as he built his tech startup. She had supported him, believed in him, helped him network with her father's connections. And when his company finally went public last year, making him a multimillionaire overnight, she had genuinely been happy for him. She had never asked for the money. She had only ever wanted his love. What a fool she had been. The sister she trusted most. Violet had always been the wild one, the beautiful disaster. At 25, she drifted between modeling gigs and influencer sponsorships, living off their parents' money and her own carefully curated Instagram aesthetic. Isla had never envied her. She had pitted her, actually. Pitted the emptiness behind Violet's perfect smile. The way she chased validation like a drug. Isla had tried to be a good sister. She had helped Violet through breakups, paid her rent twice when modeling work dried up, and given her a place to stay when she claimed she needed to find herself. And Violet had repaid her by sleeping with her fiancé. The bathroom door rattled. "Isla, open up. The photographer needs you in 10 minutes. Carmen's voice was gentle but insistent. 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, she was supposed to take pre-ceremony photos. In 2 hours, she was supposed to say "I do" to a man who had been betraying her with her own blood. The weight of it pressed down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. She gripped the edge of the marble sink, forcing air into her lungs. She had two choices. She could walk out there, pretend nothing was wrong, and become Mrs. Damien Cross, living the rest of her life with this knowledge festering inside her like a tumor, or she could burn it all down. The moment of decision. Isla opened the door. Carmen stood there, concern etched into every line of her face. What happened? Where's Violet? Isla asked, her voice eerily calm. Downstairs with your mom, I think. Why? Get her. Tell her I need her help with something in the bridal suite. Don't tell anyone else. Carmen's eyes narrowed. Isla. Please, Carmen. Just do it. 5 minutes later, Violet glided into the room, looking like an angel in her lavender bridesmaid dress. She had always been beautiful in that effortless way that made strangers stop and stare. Honey blonde hair that fell in perfect waves. Wide blue eyes that sparkled with manufactured innocence. A smile that could sell anything, including lies. Hey, sis. Oh my God. You look absolutely stunning. I can't believe you're getting married. Violet threw her arms around Isla, and it took every ounce of self-control Isla possessed not to shove her away. Instead, she let Violet hug her, let her press a kiss to her cheek, let her play the role of loving sister one last time. I need to show you something, Isla said quietly. She held out her phone. I received a message. Violet's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. It was so brief that most people would have missed it. But Isla saw. She saw the flash of panic, quickly masked. She saw her sister's eyes dart to the phone screen, then away. She saw the micro-expression of guilt before Violet's face rearranged itself into confusion. What message? Is everything okay? Isla pressed play on one of the videos. The sound of Violet's moans filled the room. On screen, Damien's face was clearly visible as he kissed his way down Violet's body, whispering things that he used to whisper to Isla. You're so much better than her. So much more exciting. She's boring, Vi. You make me feel alive. The confrontation. The color drained from Violet's face. For a moment, she just stood there, frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she lunged for the phone. Isla jerked it away, her eyes blazing with a cold fury that made Violet stumble backward. How long? Isla's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room like a blade. Isla, I can explain. How long? Violet's perfectly glossed lips trembled. Tears welled up in her blue eyes, but Isla felt nothing. No sympathy. No sisterly affection. Just a vast, yawning emptiness where love used to be. It just happened, Violet whispered. It didn't mean anything. We were drunk, and the timestamps say otherwise. A year, Violet. You've been sleeping with my fiancé for a year. You looked me in the eyes at my engagement party. You helped me pick out wedding invitations. You were supposed to be my maid of honor until I gave that role to Carmen because I wanted you to enjoy the day. And the entire time, you were fucking him. I'm sorry. Violet's tears spilled over, mascara running in black rivulets down her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. It happened. We have a connection. A real connection. You wouldn't understand. The laugh that escaped Isla's throat was jagged and broken. I wouldn't understand? I've been with him for 6 years. 6 years, Violet. I supported him when he had nothing. I believed in him when no one else did. And you think you have a connection because what? Because he's rich now? Because he can buy you things? It's not like that. Violet's voice rose, defensive now. You don't know what it's like, Isla. You've always had everything. Perfect grades. Perfect job. Perfect life. Mom and Dad worship you. You're the golden child who can do no wrong. Did you ever think that maybe I deserved something for myself? That maybe I was tired of living in your shadow? The unraveling. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Isla stared at her sister, truly seeing her for the first time. The entitlement. The narcissism. The complete lack of empathy. This wasn't a woman who had made a mistake. This was a woman who believed she was owed whatever she wanted. Consequences be damned. So you took my fiancé, Isla said slowly, because you were jealous of me? I didn't take him. Violet shot back, her tears forgotten now. He chose me. He said you were cold, that you cared more about your career than him, that you never made him feel desired. I gave him what you couldn't. Each word was designed to wound, and they hit their marks with precision. But instead of breaking Isla, they transformed her. The hurt crystallized into something harder, something sharper, something dangerous. Get out, Isla said quietly. What? Get out of this room. Go downstairs. Put on your fake smile. And wait. Violet's eyes widened. Wait for what? Isla smiled, and it was a terrible thing. You'll see. The calm before the storm. After Violet left, Isla sat down on the velvet settee and pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady now. The shock had passed, burned away by a cold, clarifying rage. She opened her contacts and found the name she needed. Marcus Reed, Damien's best man and business partner. The phone rang twice before he answered.
Isla.
Shouldn't you be getting ready to become Mrs. Cross? Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did you know about Damien and Violet? The silence on the other end was answer enough. Marcus. Isla, Look, it's complicated. I told him he was being an idiot. I told him to break it off. But how many people knew? Another pause. Most of the groomsmen suspected something. We all tried to talk him out of it. But Damien, he said he loved you. He said he was going to marry you and end things with Violet after the wedding. He said it was just cold feet. A last hurrah before settling down. Isla closed her eyes. Of course, they all knew. The bachelor party last month. The golf trips. The boys' nights out. They had all been covering for him, helping him maintain his double life. And they were all downstairs right now, waiting to watch her make a fool of herself. Thank you for telling me the truth, Isla said softly. Isla, wait. What are you going to do? She hung up without answering. There was one more call to make. She dialed a number she had saved years ago but never thought she would use. Ethan Blackwood, investigative journalist and her ex-boyfriend from college. They had ended things amicably when his career took him to London and hers kept her in New York. But they had stayed friendly, checking in on each other every few months. Isla Monroe. Ethan's warm British accent came through the line. To what do I owe the pleasure? I have a story for you, Isla said, and I need it published in the next 2 hours. Can you do that? That depends. What kind of story? The kind that ruins lives, Isla said. I'm sending you files right now. Photos, videos, bank statements. Damien Cross, the tech darling who just took his company public? He's been embezzling money from his own investors, hiding it in offshore accounts. He's also been having an affair with my sister for a year. I have proof of everything. She could hear the rapid clicking of a keyboard on the other end.
Jesus Christ, Isla.
This is huge. But why now? Why are you? He paused. Wait, isn't today your wedding day? It was, Isla said. Now it's his funeral. The plan takes shape. Carmen burst back into the room, her face flushed with panic. Isla, the photographer, is freaking out. We need to go downstairs. Your dad is looking for you. What is going on? Isla stood up, smoothing down her robe. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Carmen searched her face. Always. Good. I need you to go downstairs and tell everyone that I'm running about 15 minutes behind. Bride emergency. You know the drill. Keep Damien calm. Keep my parents calm. And whatever happens in the next 2 hours, I need you to not interfere. Can you do that? Isla, you're scaring me. I know, but I promise. This is something I have to do. Isla squeezed her friend's hands. Just trust me. After Carmen left, Isla walked over to the window. She could see the guests arriving. 300 people, all dressed in their finest. all eager to witness the union of Isla Monroe and Damian Cross. The society pages had been breathlessly covering their relationship for months. The power couple, the architect and the tech mogul. A modern fairy tale. She pulled out her phone one more time. Ethan had texted back, "Story goes live in 90 minutes. Are you sure about this?" Isla typed back, "Never been more sure of anything in my life." The wedding march begins. 45 minutes later, Isla stood at the entrance to the cathedral. The photographer had gotten his shots, though he'd commented that she looked different than she had during the engagement photos. More serious, more intense. She had smiled and told him it was just nerves. Her father, Robert Monroe, took her arm. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, silver-haired and proud. He had built his commercial real estate empire from nothing, and he loved his daughters fiercely, even if he had always pushed Isla harder to succeed. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered. "Are you ready?" Isla looked down the aisle. Damian stood at the altar in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, looking every inch the successful entrepreneur. He was handsome in that classic way, tall, dark hair, strong jawline, confident smile. He caught her eye and grinned, and she saw it. The smugness, the certainty that he had gotten away with it, that he could have his cake and eat it too. Marry the respectable, successful woman who looked good on his arm and made him look stable to investors, while keeping the exciting, beautiful mistress on the side. Behind him, the groomsmen stood in formation. Marcus looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Isla and Damian. The others just looked bored, probably already thinking about the open bar at the reception. On the bride's side, Violet stood with the other bridesmaids, her face freshly repaired, her smile brittle. Their mother sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, already crying tears of joy. The organ began to play, Wagner's Bridal Chorus. "Here comes the bride." Isla took a deep breath and started walking. The moment of truth. With each step down that endless aisle, Isla felt herself transforming. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but they had been forged into something else. Something unbreakable. She had spent the last hour making calls, sending emails, ensuring that every domino was in place. By the time the ceremony ended, nothing would ever be the same. She reached the altar. Damian took her hands, and she let him. His palms were warm, slightly sweaty. Nervous, she realized. Good. The officiant, a kindly old priest who had known her family for years, began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Isla barely heard the words. She was counting down in her head. Ethan's story would go live in approximately 10 minutes. She just had to keep everyone here until then. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional pause. No one ever spoke during this part. It was ceremonial, a relic from older times. Isla turned to face the crowd. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I have something to say." A collective gasp rippled through the cathedral. Damian's grip on her hands tightened. "Isla, what are you?" She pulled her hands free and stepped back, creating distance between them. "I'm sorry to interrupt this beautiful ceremony," she said, projecting her voice so even the people in the back pews could hear. "But I can't marry Damian Cross. Not because I don't love him, but because he's been having an affair with my sister, Violet, for the past year." The cathedral erupted. People were standing up, shouting questions. Her mother screamed. Her father's face turned an alarming shade of red. Damian lunged forward, trying to grab her arm. "Isla, stop this right now. You're being hysterical." "Am I?" She pulled out her phone, now connected to the cathedral's sound system via Bluetooth. A video began playing on the massive screens that had been set up to show the ceremony to guests in the overflow rooms. Violet's voice filled the sacred space. "I love you, Damian. When are you going to leave her? I'm tired of hiding." On screen, Damian's voice responded, "Soon, baby. Promise. Just let me get through the wedding. I need her father's connections for the business. Once that's secured, I'll figure out a way to end it. But I need you to be patient. The final revelation. Violet was sobbing openly now, mascara streaming down her face again. People were pointing at her, whispering. Some of the guests were already pulling out their phones, filming the disaster unfolding before them. But wait, Isla said, her voice cutting through the chaos. There's more. You see, while Damien was busy sleeping with my sister and planning to use me for my family connections, he was also embezzling millions from his own company. Offshore accounts, fake investors, the whole thing. And as of, she checked her watch, 3 minutes ago, that story went live on the website of one of the UK's most reputable investigative journalists, complete with all the evidence I spent the last year secretly collecting. Damien's face went from red to white. What did you do? What you forced me to do, Isla said calmly. You see, I've known about you and Violet for 6 months. I hired a private investigator after I noticed you coming home smelling like her perfume. And once I started digging, I found so much more than just an affair. I found fraud, conspiracy, crimes that will send you to prison for a very long time. You crazy bitch, Damien roared, lunging for her. Robert Monroe intercepted him, grabbing Damien by the collar of his expensive tuxedo and slamming him against the altar. You touch my daughter and I'll kill you myself. Call the police, Isla said to Carmen, who was staring at her with a mixture of shock and awe. I'm sure they'll want to have a conversation with Mr. Cross about his business practices. As sirens began to wail in the distance, Isla turned to look at Violet one last time. Her sister had collapsed in the front pew, her perfect facade completely shattered. Their mother was alternating between comforting Violet and shouting questions at Isla. I hope it was worth it, Isla said softly, looking at both her sister and her ex-fiancé. I hope those stolen moments were worth losing everything. She turned and walked back down the aisle, alone, still in her wedding dress. 300 guests watched her go in stunned silence. But Isla Monroe had never felt more powerful in her entire life. The fairy tale was over. But the revenge? The revenge was just beginning. Welcome back to Rose and Retribution. If you haven't watched part 1, go back now, you won't want to miss how this all began. The viral video hit 10 million views in the first 24 hours. Tech mogul's wedding explodes in cheating scandal, dominated every social media platform, every gossip blog, every news outlet. Isla Monroe's face was everywhere. The jilted bride who had exposed her fiancé's affair and financial crimes in front of 300 witnesses was the internet's new hero. But Isla didn't feel like a hero. She felt numb. 3 days after the wedding that never was, she sat in her corner office at Sterling & Associates, Manhattan's premier architectural firm, staring at blueprints she couldn't focus on. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from reporters, well-wishers, and gawkers. She had turned off her social media notifications after the first 1,000 tags. The humiliation of having her private pain dissected by strangers was almost worse than the betrayal itself. Almost. A knock on her glass door made her look up. Gregory Sterling, the silver-haired founder of the firm and her mentor for the past 6 years, stood in the doorway with an expression that made her stomach drop. We need to talk, Isla. The price of truth. Gregory closed the door behind him and sat down across from her desk. He didn't look angry exactly. He looked tired, disappointed. The same look her father had given her when she'd refused to apologize to Violet for ruining her reputation. I've been fielding calls all morning, Gregory said, folding his hands on her desk. Clients are concerned. The Thornton project, the Hudson Tower redesign, the Brooklyn development, they're all asking if you're going to be able to focus. If this situation is going to affect your work. My situation? Isla repeated, her voice flat. You mean my fiancé committing fraud and sleeping with my sister? I mean the very public spectacle at the cathedral, Gregory said carefully. Isla, I understand you were hurt. Anyone would be. But airing your personal drama in front of half of Manhattan's elite wasn't the most professional choice. Some of our clients were at that wedding. Robert Thornton's wife called me personally, very upset about the whole ordeal. Isla stared at him, disbelief rising like bile in her throat. I exposed a criminal, Gregory. Damien was stealing millions. The FBI is investigating him right now. And you're concerned about optics. I'm concerned about this firm's reputation, Gregory said, his voice hardening. We represent stability, discretion, excellence, not scandal. The partners and I have discussed it, and we think it would be best if you took some time off. A leave of absence. 6 months, maybe a year. Let things cool down. You're firing me. I'm giving you space to heal, Gregory corrected, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. With full benefits, of course. And when you're ready to come back, we'll reassess. Isla laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised them both. Robert Thornton's wife is upset? Her husband has 3 mistresses and a cocaine habit that everyone in this industry knows about. But I'm the problem because I refuse to marry a criminal and a cheater quietly. Gregory stood up. Clean out your office by Friday. HR will handle the paperwork. He left without another word, and Isla sat there in the deafening silence, staring at the walls she had covered with her awards, her achievements, her proof that she mattered. 7 years of 60-hour weeks. 7 years of sacrificing her personal life for projects that made other people rich. And it could all be erased in a moment because she had dared to defend herself. The unfairness of it made her want to scream. But she had no tears left. She had cried them all out 3 nights ago, alone in her apartment, while the world turned her pain into entertainment. The sisters' betrayal runs deeper. That evening, Isla returned to her Upper East Side apartment to find her mother waiting in the hallway. Patricia Monroe was a formidable woman, former socialite, current charity board member, an expert in maintaining appearances at all costs. She wore a Chanel suit and a look of barely contained fury. "We need to talk about your sister," Patricia said without preamble. "I have nothing to say about Violet." "Well, I do." Patricia pushed past Isla into the apartment, her heels clicking authoritatively on the hardwood floors. "She's devastated, Isla. Absolutely devastated. She's checked herself into a wellness retreat in the Hamptons because she can't handle the online harassment." Isla hung up her coat slowly, willing herself to stay calm. "Online harassment? You mean people calling her out for sleeping with her sister's fiancé? People are sending her death threats." Patricia's voice rose. "They're calling her terrible names. Her Instagram has been flooded with horrible comments. She had to delete all her social media. Do you understand what you've done to her career? To her reputation? Do you understand what she did to me?" Isla turned to face her mother, and the rage she'd been suppressing all day finally broke free. "She slept with Damien for a year, Mom. A year. She looked me in the eyes and lied to me over and over again. She helped me plan my wedding while she was screwing my fiancé. And you want me to feel sorry for her because people on the internet are being mean." Patricia's face tightened. "She made a mistake. Terrible mistake, yes. But she's your sister. Family forgives." "No," Isla said quietly. "Family doesn't betray you in the first place. You're being selfish," Patricia snapped. "This vendetta of yours has hurt everyone. Your father's business partners are distancing themselves because they don't want to be associated with the scandal. The Whitmore Foundation dropped me from their gala committee. Our entire family is suffering because you couldn't handle your private matters with discretion." Isla stared at her mother, really seeing her for the first time. Patricia Monroe had built her entire life on appearances, on being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect society woman. And now her daughter had committed the cardinal sin. She had made a scene. She had aired the family's dirty laundry in public. She had prioritized truth over reputation. "Get out," Isla said. "Excuse me? Get out of my apartment. And don't come back until you're ready to apologize for defending the person who destroyed my life instead of supporting the daughter who was wronged." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Finally, she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. "You're going to regret this, Isla. Mark my words. You're going to end up alone because you're too proud to forgive." The door slammed, and Isla was alone again. She walked to her bedroom, stripped off her work clothes, and stared at herself in the full-length mirror. She looked thinner, older. There were dark circles under her eyes that concealer couldn't hide anymore. She looked like a woman who had lost everything. Maybe she had. An unexpected ally. 2 weeks crawled by in a blur of sleepless nights and empty days. Isla had cleaned out her office, signed the severance papers, and stopped answering calls from anyone with the last name Monroe. She spent her days applying to jobs in other cities. Boston, Chicago, Seattle, anywhere that wasn't New York, and her nights watching mindless television and drinking wine straight from the bottle. It was during one of these nights, halfway through her second bottle of Merlot and a reality show about people who married strangers, that her doorbell rang. She almost didn't answer it, but the ringing was persistent, and eventually she dragged herself off the couch and checked the peephole. A woman she didn't recognize stood in the hallway. She was striking, tall, with dark skin, natural hair styled in an elegant twist, and a power suit that screamed lawyer or executive. She looked expensive and serious. Isla opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Isla Monroe? My name is Simone Laurent. I'm a corporate attorney, and I represent several of Damien Cross's former business partners, the ones he defrauded. May I come in?" Isla's fuzzy brain tried to process this. "Why?" "Because we want to hire you." 10 minutes later, Simone sat in Isla's living room, somehow making the worn couch look like a throne, while Isla tried to sober up with coffee and embarrassment. "I apologize for the state of things," Isla muttered, shoving empty takeout containers off the coffee table. "I wasn't expecting company." "I've seen worse," Simone said with a slight smile. "I once had to track down a client who'd been on a 3-day bender in Atlantic City." "You're doing fine, all things considered." "Why are you here?" Isla asked, settling into the armchair across from her unexpected guest. "What do you mean your clients want to hire me?" Simone pulled out a leather portfolio and extracted several documents. Damien Cross defrauded 14 investors out of a combined $83 million. When your story broke, the FBI launched a full investigation. They've frozen his assets, and he's currently out on bail awaiting trial. My clients want their money back. Good. He deserves prison. He does. But here's the problem. Most of his assets are hidden in shell corporations and offshore accounts. The forensic accountants can track some of it, but Damien was clever. He buried the money in complex financial structures that will take years to untangle. Simone leaned forward. Unless someone who knows him intimately, someone who might have had access to his personal files and passwords, were to help expedite the process. Isla's pulse quickened. "You want me to help you find his money?" "I want you to destroy him," Simone corrected, her dark eyes glinting. "Completely. Financially, professionally, socially. Everything he took from you we take back tenfold. And my clients are willing to pay you handsomely for your assistance. We're talking about a finder's fee of 15% of whatever we recover." Isla did the math in her head. 15% of 83 million was, her brain short-circuited. That's over $12 million. Roughly, yes. Enough to never work for someone like Gregory Sterling again. Enough to start your own firm if you wanted. Enough to rebuild your life exactly as you want it. Simone paused. And more importantly, it would ensure that Damien Cross doesn't just go to prison for a few years and come out to some cushy minimum security sentence. It would ruin him completely. The decision to fight back. Isla's hands trembled around her coffee mug. This was it. The universe was offering her a chance at real revenge, the kind that didn't just expose but obliterated. She thought about the way Damien had looked at her in the cathedral, right before she'd revealed everything. That smug, confident smile that said he thought he'd won. She thought about Violet in her wellness retreat, playing the victim while Isla lost her career. She thought about her mother choosing appearances over truth, and Gregory Sterling treating her like a liability instead of a human being. "What would I have to do?" Isla asked slowly. Simone smiled like a shark scenting blood. "Damien kept meticulous records. He's compulsive about it, a control issue according to his therapist. You lived with him for 2 years before he moved to his penthouse last year. You have memories of his habits, his hiding places, his patterns. We need you to help us think like he thinks. Where would he hide backup drives? What password variations would he use? What properties might be registered under shell companies that we don't know about yet? I can do that, Isla said, her mind already racing. She remembered Damien's home office, the one he'd always kept locked even from her. She remembered the safety deposit box at the bank he thought she didn't know about. She remembered the hunting cabin upstate that was registered under his mother's maiden name. There's one more thing, Simone said, her expression turning serious. This won't be easy. Damien will fight back. He's hired one of the best defense attorneys in the country, and he's already trying to paint you as a scorned woman who's fabricating evidence out of jealousy. If you do this, if you come after him with everything we have, he will try to destroy you even more than he already has. Let him try, Isla said, and she was surprised by the steel in her own voice. I've already lost my job, my family, and my reputation. What else can he take from me? Your freedom if he's smart. He could countersue for defamation, claim you hacked his accounts, manufacture evidence that you were involved in the fraud. Rich men with expensive lawyers can make innocent people look guilty. Isla thought about this, really thought about it. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. This was about making sure that Damien Cross didn't get to charm and lie his way out of consequences the way powerful men always seem to do. I'm in, she said. Tell me what you need. The investigation begins. The next morning, Isla woke up with purpose for the first time in weeks. Simone had left her with a secure laptop, encrypted communication software, and a list of questions to start with. Where did Damien keep his personal backup drives? What were his favorite numbers, places, dates that he might use in passwords? Did he have any properties or assets she knew about that weren't in his name? Isla made a fresh pot of coffee, opened the laptop, and started typing. The memories flooded back, and with them came pain, but she channeled it into focus. She remembered the way Damien organized his office, alphabetically for business files, chronologically for personal ones. She remembered his obsession with his college football glory days. His passwords often included his jersey number 23. She remembered the silver USB drive he wore on a chain around his neck, the one he claimed held sentimental photos but never let her look at. She documented everything, every detail, no matter how small. The name of his mother's childhood friend who'd loaned him startup capital that was never repaid. The hunting cabin in the Adirondacks. The art collection he'd started buying last year. All pieces that could easily be moved and sold. The cryptocurrency wallets he'd bragged about during dinner parties. Hours passed in a focused blur. When her phone rang, she almost didn't answer it, but the caller ID made her freeze. Marcus Reed, Damien's former best friend and business partner.
Isla?
Please don't hang up. Give me one reason why I shouldn't. Because I want to help you destroy him. An unlikely partnership. They met at a quiet coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from the Manhattan social circles where they might be recognized. Marcus looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing a faded hoodie instead of his usual designer clothes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Thank you for meeting me, he said as Isla slid into the booth across from him. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, Isla admitted. You knew about him and Violet. You all knew, and none of you told me. Marcus flinched. I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I told myself it wasn't my place, that I'd be betraying Damien's trust. All the excuses men make when they're too cowardly to do the right thing. But I should have told you. You deserved to know. Why are you here now? Because Damien didn't just betray you. He betrayed me, too. Marcus pulled out his own laptop, opening it to show spreadsheets and email chains. I've been going through our company finances ever since your journalist friend published that story. Damien didn't just defraud outside investors. He's been skimming from the company accounts, falsifying revenue reports, cooking the books to make it look like we're more profitable than we are. When the FBI finishes their investigation, the company is going to collapse. And all of us who worked there, who trusted him, were going to be left with nothing. Isla studied him. Marcus had always been the nice one in Damien's circle, the guy who asked how she was doing at parties, who remembered her birthday. But he'd still stood by while Damien cheated and lied. "How do I know this isn't a trap?" she asked. "How do I know Damien didn't send you here to gather evidence against me? Because he's threatening to make me the fall guy," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "His lawyers are building a defense that says I was the one managing the fraudulent accounts, that I was the chief financial officer who should have caught it, and if I didn't, it must have been because I was in on it. He's going to throw me under the bus to save himself, and I'll go to prison for crimes he committed." Isla saw the terror in his eyes and knew he was telling the truth. Damien was a survivor above all else, and if he could sacrifice his best friend to avoid prison, he would do it without hesitation. "What do you have?" she asked. Marcus's relief was palpable. He turned the laptop toward her. "Everything. Every email, every text message, every file I could download before he locked me out of the company systems. Proof that he was the one making the decisions, the one moving money, the one creating fake investor profiles. With this and whatever evidence you have, we can bury him." The hunt for hidden assets. Over the next 3 weeks, Isla became a woman possessed. She worked 18-hour days with Simone's legal team, cross-referencing Marcus's files with her own memories and the forensic accountant's findings. They discovered a web of fraud so extensive it was almost impressive. Damien had been stealing from his company for over 2 years, long before he'd even met Violet. The affair, it turned out, was just one symptom of a man who believed rules didn't apply to him. They found the hunting cabin, exactly where Isla remembered it. Inside a hidden safe in the floorboards, they discovered backup drives containing every fraudulent transaction, every fake investor contract, every piece of evidence Damien had kept as insurance. He'd probably planned to use it as leverage if he ever got caught, to threaten other people with exposure if they turned on him. Instead, it became the smoking gun that would convict him. They found the cryptocurrency wallets worth millions. They found the art collection, purchased with stolen money and stored in a climate-controlled facility under a shell company name. They found offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Piece by piece, they dismantled his empire of lies. But the sweetest discovery came from an unexpected source. Violet herself. The sister's confession. Isla was working late in Simone's office when the receptionist buzzed through. "There's a Violet Monroe here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." Isla's first instinct was to refuse. She hadn't spoken to her sister since the wedding, hadn't even acknowledged the dozens of tearful voicemails Violet had left. But curiosity won out. "Send her in." Violet looked like a ghost of herself. She'd lost weight, her cheekbones too sharp under sallow skin. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore yoga pants and a sweatshirt. Unthinkable for the sister who'd once treated every public appearance like a fashion show. She looked young and scared and broken. "Thank you for seeing me," Violet whispered, hovering near the door like she might bolt. "I have 5 minutes," Isla said coldly. "Say what you came to say." Violet's eyes filled with tears.
I'm sorry.
"I'm so sorry, Isla. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to know that I never meant to hurt me, to betray me, to destroy my life." Isla's voice was sharp enough to draw blood. "Which part didn't you mean, Violet?" "All of it. None of it." "I don't know." Violet's composure cracked, and she sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I was jealous of you. I was so jealous I couldn't see straight. You had everything, the career, the respect, the perfect boyfriend. And I had nothing. Just my looks, and even those are fading. I'm 25, Isla, and I'm already aging out of modeling. I'm already becoming irrelevant. So you took what was mine." "He pursued me," Violet said, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. "I know that doesn't make it better, but he's the one who made the first move. He started messaging me on Instagram after your engagement party, saying how beautiful I was, how he'd always noticed me. I should have told you immediately. I should have blocked him. But it felt good to be wanted by someone successful, someone powerful. Someone who chose me over perfect Isla Monroe." Isla felt sick. How romantic. But now I understand, Violet continued, her voice gaining strength. He never cared about me. I was just a toy, something fun and disposable. After the wedding blew up, he cut me off completely. Blocked my number, ghosted me. I tried to reach out to see if he was okay, if we could weather the scandal together. And you know what he texted me? You were a mistake. Stop contacting me or I'll get a restraining order. Despite everything, Isla felt a twinge of grim satisfaction. Damien was showing Violet exactly who he was, and her sister was finally seeing it. Why are you telling me this? Isla asked. Violet reached into her purse and pulled out a phone. Because he doesn't know I made copies of everything. Every text, every video, every voice message where he talked about the fraud, about using your family connections, about his plan to marry you for business reasons and keep me as his mistress. I have proof of everything, Isla, and I want to give it to you. The perfect revenge takes shape. Isla stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. Why would you do that? It incriminates you too. I don't care anymore, Violet said, and there was a hollowness in her voice that made Isla believe her. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. Mom won't speak to me unless it's to tell me how I've embarrassed the family. I have nothing left to lose. But you can still make him pay. You can make sure he doesn't get to walk away from this and rebuild his life in a few years. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I might never get it. But please, let me do this one thing right. Isla took the phone with trembling hands. She scrolled through the messages, and with each one, her resolve hardened. Here was evidence of premeditation. Here was proof that Damien had planned the fraud from the beginning. Here were voice memos where he laughed about stupid investors who trusted him. Here was everything they needed to ensure he would spend decades in prison, not just a few years in some cushy white-collar facility. Thank you, Isla said quietly. Violet stood up to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're the strongest person I know. I wish I could be more like you. I wish I'd been a better sister. You can start by testifying when this goes to trial, Isla said. No immunity deals, no plea bargains. You stand up in court and you tell the truth about everything. That's how you be a better sister. Violet nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will. I promise. After she left, Isla sat alone in the dark office, holding the phone that would end Damien Cross. She thought about calling Simone immediately, but instead she took a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. This was accountability. This was proof that powerful men who hurt women don't always get away with it. She picked up her own phone and called Simone. I have something you need to see, and you're going to want to call the FBI. The trap is set. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place 2 days later. The FBI, armed with Violet's evidence and the financial records from the hunting cabin, secured a warrant for Damien's arrest on 37 counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. But Simone had a better idea. Let him think he's winning, she said, gathered in her office with Isla, Marcus, and 2 FBI agents. His trial is scheduled for 3 months from now. His lawyers are confident they can either get a plea deal or pin enough blame on Marcus to reduce his sentence. He thinks he's going to get through this. So what do we do? Marcus asked. We let him have his moment, Simone said with a predatory smile. And then we destroy him in front of everyone. We've been given permission to hold a press conference to address the charges. Damien's lawyers have agreed to it, thinking they can spin the narrative, paint him as a victim of overzealous prosecution and a vindictive ex-fiancé. They're going to hold it at the Plaza Hotel in the Grand Ballroom. Very public, very visible. Isla understood immediately. You want me there. I want you to speak, Simone corrected. I want you to stand up in front of every camera in New York and present the evidence. I want the world to hear in your words exactly what he did. And I want him to see your face when his entire world crumbles. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Isla had spent the last month hiding from the spotlight, avoiding reporters, trying to put the pieces of her life back together in private. Going public again, making herself vulnerable to scrutiny and judgment, was the last thing she wanted. But it was also the most powerful thing she could do. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll tell them everything." The press conference was scheduled for the following Monday. In the days leading up to it, Isla prepared her statement with Simone's help, rehearsing until her voice didn't shake, until she could recite the facts without breaking down. She bought a new suit, not white like a victim, not black like a mourner, but a deep emerald green that made her look strong and alive. She practiced looking into cameras without flinching. She prepared herself for the war. And on Monday morning, she walked into the Plaza Hotel ballroom with her head held high, ready to face the man who had tried to destroy her. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, and curious onlookers. Damien sat at a long table at the front, flanked by his legal team, for attorneys in matching navy suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a lawyer catalog. He was wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and a somber expression, playing the role of wrongfully accused innocent man. When he saw Isla enter, his mask slipped for just a second. She saw the fury in his eyes, quickly hidden behind a veneer of calm. "Good. Let him be afraid." Simone took the podium first, laying out the charges in clinical detail. Then she invited Isla to speak. Isla approached the microphone, very aware of every eye in the room on her. She could see Damien's lawyers watching her, ready to object to anything that might prejudice the jury pool. She could see reporters leaning forward, salivating for a soundbite. She could see Marcus in the back of the room, giving her an encouraging nod. "My name is Isla Monroe," she began, her voice steady. "And I'm here today to tell you about the man I almost married, the public execution." For the next 20 minutes, Isla laid it all out. She presented the evidence calmly, methodically, letting the facts speak for themselves. She showed financial records on the large screens behind her, highlighting the millions that had been stolen. She played audio clips from Violet's phone, Damien's own voice incriminating him. She presented emails where he discussed the fraud with co-conspirators. She presented everything, but she also spoke from the heart. Damien Cross is a man who believes the rules don't apply to him. He believes he's smarter than everyone else, that he can lie and cheat and steal and charm his way out of consequences. He stole from investors who trusted him. He stole from employees who believed in his vision. He stole from his own company. And he stole my faith in love, my career, and my peace of mind. She locked eyes with Damien across the room. "But he didn't break me, and he won't get away with this." The room erupted in questions as she stepped away from the podium. Damien's lawyers immediately called for a recess, trying to control the damage, but it was too late. The evidence was public now. The world knew everything. As Isla pushed through the crowd of reporters, someone grabbed her arm. She turned to find Ethan Blackwood, the journalist who had published her original story. "That was brilliant," he said, his British accent cutting through the chaos. "Absolutely brilliant. You just guaranteed he'll spend the rest of his life in prison." "That was the goal," Isla said, allowing herself a small smile. "There's something else," Ethan said, lowering his voice. "I've been digging into Damien's past, and I found something. Another woman from 5 years ago. She was his girlfriend before you, and she disappeared after accusing him of assault. The case was dropped, she moved out of state, and no one ever heard from her again. I think she was paid off. I think Damien has done this before, the lying, the manipulation, possibly worse. Would you be willing to help me find her?" Isla looked back at the chaos in the ballroom, at Damien being led out by his lawyers, his perfect facade finally cracked. She thought about all the women who'd come before her, who'd been hurt and silenced. She thought about all the women who would come after, if men like Damien were allowed to keep getting away with it. "Yes," she said. "Let's find her. Let's find all of them." As she walked out of the Plaza Hotel and into the bright Manhattan afternoon, Isla Monroe felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for reconciliation, not for things to go back to normal, but for something better. For justice. For accountability. for a future where she wasn't defined by what had been done to her, but by what she chose to do next. The revenge was sweet, but the freedom, that was even sweeter. Welcome back to Rose and Retribution. This is the final chapter, the moment where everything comes full circle and justice is finally served. 6 weeks after the press conference that destroyed Damian Cross's last shred of credibility, Isla found herself on a plane to Portland, Oregon. Ethan sat beside her, his laptop open, reviewing notes on the woman they were about to meet. Claire Hendricks, Damian's ex-girlfriend from 5 years ago, the one who had disappeared after accusing him of assault. Finding Claire had been easier than expected. Ethan's investigative skills combined with Isla's newfound determination had led them through a trail of sealed court records, NDAs, and finally, a small yoga studio in Portland's Pearl District. Claire owned it now, having rebuilt her life far away from the man who had nearly destroyed it. "Are you nervous?" Ethan asked as the plane began its descent. "Terrified," Isla admitted. "What if she doesn't want to talk? What if we're reopening wounds that finally healed? What if I'm being selfish, dragging her back into this nightmare just to make my own case stronger?" Ethan closed his laptop and looked at her seriously. "Then we respect her decision and we leave. But Isla, you're not being selfish. You're giving her a choice she didn't have before. The choice to be heard, to be believed, to be part of bringing him down. That's not cruelty. That's justice." The yoga studio was peaceful. All exposed brick and plants hanging from macrame holders, the scent of lavender and sandalwood floating in the air. A class was just ending as they arrived, students rolling up their mats and chatting quietly. And there, at the front of the room, was Claire Hendricks. She was petite, with auburn hair pulled back in a loose braid, her face makeup-free and serene. She looked nothing like Isla had imagined. There was no visible trauma, no haunted expression. She looked whole, happy even. It made Isla wonder if they were making a terrible mistake. But when Claire saw them waiting by the door, recognition flickered across her face. She'd obviously seen the news. She knew who Isla was, a survivor's story. "You came," Claire said simply, approaching them after her students had filed out. "I wondered if you would." "You were expecting us?" Isla asked, surprised. "I've been following your story since the wedding. When I saw what you did, exposing him in front of everyone, refusing to be silenced, I knew eventually you'd find your way to me." The journalist helped. She nodded at Ethan. "You wrote about the sealed records in your latest piece. It wasn't hard to read between the lines." They moved to Claire's small office in the back of the studio. It was cozy, filled with books on meditation and healing. A small altar with crystals and candles in one corner. Claire made them tea with steady hands. "I'm not going to ask if you want to talk about it," Isla said carefully. "If you don't, we'll leave. I don't want to cause you more pain." Claire smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Pain is what happens when we hold things in, not when we let them out. I've had 5 years of therapy. I'm ready to talk. I've actually been waiting for someone to ask." She settled into her chair, cradling her tea. "I met Damian when I was 23. I was working as a paralegal trying to save money for law school. He was 26, just starting his company, all ambition and charm. He swept me off my feet, made me feel like I was the center of his universe. For 6 months it was perfect, and then it wasn't." Isla's chest tightened. She knew this story. She had lived a version of it. "The control started small," Claire continued. "Comments about my clothes, were they too revealing? Questions about where I was going, who I was with, checking my phone, getting angry if I didn't text back immediately. I told myself it was because he loved me, because he was scared of losing me. Then the emotional abuse got worse. He'd tear me down, tell me I was stupid, that no one else would want me, that I was lucky he put up with me. And then one night, after a company party where I talked too long to one of his investors, he hit me." Claire's voice didn't waver, but her hands tightened around her mug. "Just once. A backhand across the face that split my lip. He was immediately apologetic, crying, swearing it would never happen again. I wanted to believe him, But 2 weeks later, it happened again. And again. And when I finally tried to leave, when I packed my bags and told him I was done, he raped me. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Isla felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. This wasn't about her pain. This was about Claire's. I went to the police, Claire said. I pressed charges. I had photos of the bruises, hospital records, text messages where he threatened me. And then his lawyers came. They offered me money, $500,000, to drop the charges and sign an NDA. They said if I didn't take it, they would destroy me in court. They would dig up every mistake I'd ever made, every relationship, every embarrassing photo from college. They would paint me as a vengeful ex-girlfriend trying to ruin a promising entrepreneur. And they had the resources to do it. So you took the money, Ethan said gently. I took the money, Claire confirmed. And I've regretted it every day since. Not because I needed to stay silent. Therapy helped me find my voice again. But because I knew he would do it again. I knew he would hurt someone else. And I knew that when he did, it would be partially my fault for not stopping him when I had the chance. Isla reached across the table and took Claire's hand. It wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. He's a monster, and monsters don't stop until someone makes them. Claire squeezed her hand. That's why I'm going to testify. The NDA is void if he commits perjury or if I'm subpoenaed in a criminal case. His lawyers were clever, but not clever enough. I've been talking to prosecutors in New York. They're building a pattern of behavior case, fraud, manipulation, abuse. With my testimony and Violet's and yours, they can show the jury exactly who Damien Cross really is. Building the case. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of depositions, legal strategy sessions, and media management. Claire flew to New York twice to meet with prosecutors. Violet, true to her word, had hired her own lawyer and agreed to testify without immunity, accepting whatever consequences came from her role in the affair. Marcus handed over thousands of pages of financial documents and emails. And Isla worked with Simone's team to prepare for the trial that would determine Damien's fate. The media frenzy was relentless. Isla's face was on every tabloid, every news site, every social media platform. Some people called her a hero. Others called her vindictive, a woman scorned who couldn't let go. The comments sections were vicious, dissecting everything from her appearance to her sexual history, calling her every name imaginable. But Isla had learned something important. Other people's opinions couldn't hurt her anymore. She had survived the worst thing she could imagine, betrayal by the 2 people she'd loved most. Everything else was just noise. She'd also started rebuilding her life in ways she'd never expected. With the finder's fee from recovering Damien's stolen assets, a staggering $14 million after all was recovered and distributed, she had the freedom to create the future she actually wanted. Not the one she'd been told to want. She started her own architectural firm, Monroe Design Group, focusing on affordable housing and community projects instead of luxury developments for the ultra-rich. She hired 3 junior architects who'd been laid off during the pandemic and couldn't find work. She created a scholarship fund for women in STEM fields at her alma mater. She donated $1 million to domestic violence shelters across New York. And slowly, painfully, she started to heal.